Alright, so welcome to this episode. Here we are going to handle the admin signing in. It is very important for us to have that so that we can be able to handle the entry of new articles. So far, we've manually entered one article through our database management GUI tool, which is the headers here. So you could be using PHP or any other tool, but that is uncomfortable. So we will have to try to reach out to our administrative interfaces in order to be able to use this and add our new articles or manage our articles. So our admin has a sign-in page which is admin.login.php. So we are going to look at programming this interface in this episode. So to get started, first of all, we need to understand the principle of signing in, or generally known as authentication. So authentication is like you showing up at an invitation or a conference, and then you have to prove that you were invited. You are part of the people who are invited. So that's authentication. And to prove that you are part of the people who are invited, you need to present some credentials. So that might be the receipts of you paying your seat, or it might be a ticket to be a guest or a speaker. So it is very important to show up something. But in our case, in our system case, we require the user to provide their email and their password. So that means already in our system, we should have been having the email and the password of these people who we allow to come in. And that's why we have our admins table. So basically, this table will record these administrators that are allowed to come in, that are allowed to access that area of the application. So to start, we'll randomly just enter a user here with some dummy data. The name is just going to be John Doe. So that's the name you want to display. The email, I'll write jdo.do@gmail.com. And then they need to provide a password. For the password, I'm just going to write plain password. And the date they were created will be generated automatically. So here we can see that the password shows up in plain. This is not a right thing to do. This is not the right thing to do, to have the password in plain like that. So over time, once we continued working on this, we are going to have this place encrypted. So basically, we are going to have a lot of strange characters here to represent the password. Nobody shouldn't be able to see the actual password. All right, so for now, we are going to use just the plain text password to be able to test our application. So once we start coding, we are going to generate a cryptogram. So that's the password encrypted. The text we get is called a cryptogram. So we're going to get a cryptogram and then place it here. So let's go ahead and now look at what we can do here. So first of all, when we look at the sign-in process, so let's go here. The sign-in process works as such. So the user comes in, they provide their credentials, so email and password, and then they send it to our application's handler. So what function or what part of our application that will be in charge of checking these details the people enter. So let's assume that we are going to use the same admin sign-in page. So admin login page is going to handle this same form in processing it. So as soon as you provide the email and the password, you are going to be redirected to the same admin login.php. So you are going to be sent there, login, and that page will know that, okay, you have submitted the form. So once it knows that, it will now take your details. So get details. It will get the details. Once it gets the details, it will query the database. So check if the data the person provided is available in the database. Is it part database? Is it part of the users we have in our database? If we see something like that, we'll check, does the password match? the username and password, does it match? So email and password are valid. Password are valid. So once this condition is satisfied, then we can assume the user is a correct user. So let's go ahead and implement that on our code. So our our login page is called admin-login.php. So on this page, it means we will need to be able to access the database. So we will have to include a database connection. But before that, let's arrange our form. Let's get it ready to be sure. So here I indicated the action is going to be admin dashboard, but no, we are going to send it to the admin login because I wanted us to be able to be redirected to the admin dashboard. That's why I wrote it that way. So that I could simulate the signing in process. So normally, if this process goes well, now we'll be redirected to the admin's dashboards, admin_dashboard.php. So we want we have a field for email. The name is email. It is correct. And then the password, the name is password. It is important to have these names because that's what PHP is going to use to access their values. So we are redirecting to the same page. So when you are redirecting to the same page, you can ignore this by leaving it empty. So by default, HTML now will know that, okay, this is submitting to the actual same page. So we can go ahead. So on top of our file here, we can go ahead and open our PHP section. This is where we are going to handle the processing of the file. Okay, so once that's done, if we try to submit the form, we'll see that it will be redirected to the same place. If I reload, it will ask me if I want to resubmit because I have already submitted once already. And that is happening because we are using the post method here. If it was get, the data will be passed to the admin login page through the URL here with a query string. So once that's done, the title here we need to change it, admin login. So once that's done, and also I think the articles side, we have something here we need to look at. The articles title is here, so pick this and bring it in the title of the page so that the page will have a dynamic title. So let's just move on. That was just a bracket. So once that's done, let's now go ahead and handle the form. So how do we handle the form? So first of all, we need to get the form data. So we'll check first of all if there's any form submitted. So if it's set, so if the global variable post is set, so if that form exists, it means there's a form submitted. Normally we could also count, so and count. So we want to count the content inside. If it is more than 0, is greater than 0, then not only the form was submitted, but there's some content also sent, because the post could be set somehow, not without the form being submitted. So let's look at it. If that is the case, I would like to var dump the global variable post and see what it has in it. So let me reload the page and just submit, and we can see that it brings us email and password, and they are all empty. So indeed it was able to capture this form. So we now have to do, first of all, check if these fields are not empty. Check if fields are not empty. So we don't want to go ahead and process if the user provides empty values. Or let's go ahead and first of all create variables for form fields. So to create variables for form fields, we need a variable for the email, and that will have this email. So the field is called email, and here you could go ahead and process it by saying string to lower. So no matter how the user types it, will lower the case. For the password, we don't do anything because it's sensible. It can have special characters and upper and left character, upper and lower characters. So we go ahead and we just write password in plain. We don't do anything for the password. So once we have the values, so I'll push them up. Good. So once we have the values, let's check if they are not empty. Right? So we go ahead. If the values are empty, so let's say if empty, so if empty the email, or if we trim the email value and it still equals to empty string, then there's a problem with that. So we can go ahead and set an error variable. So let's say email empty. So empty email. Yes, empty email. Empty email. So equals to. I'm thinking of how to handle these errors, because there are several ways of doing this. So empty email. Email must not be empty. So assuming that, and then we do the same thing for the password. Password empty. Password must not be empty. Password must not be empty. So also at this point we could see that once these errors occur and we find out yes there are errors, and then these variables are set at this place, if there's any other code that follows, it will still run. So it means normally once these errors happen, we should stop the script from continuing running. So to do that, we could exit it by doing so, or we simply write die just to have that. But if we do this, we keep the exit. So if we die the script, we wouldn't get any message because we will get a blank page. We haven't gotten to the HTML area, so we'll get a blank page. So here I expect it to just exit the PHP code, and then but the variable will still be created, which can be accessible right in the HTML section, which we can use now to display if there's any error. So let me give it a try and see. So I'm expecting that if there's any error at this place, I should have, let me add a tag small, and then that tag should be able to display a variable. Let's say that variable is called empty email. I think empty email, it is a variable, so $sign. So if I reload, so yes, I think I was wrong. The exit does not just exit the code. So in our case, I think what we can do is to remove these guys, and we leave the code go on. We leave it go on. Okay, so email must not be empty. I can see it here, and because of the margin we added, so it brings that space. So it means it's better if we display that error somewhere on top of the form, so somewhere right under the login, like that. So if I submit again, so it tells me email must not be empty. So it means I should be able to place them in a paragraph. So I will get that space. So we have email must not be empty. So I'll do the same thing for, we add a BR, So empty email, then password. So if they are empty, we go ahead. So this allows us to get these errors. But here I would like to maybe style it, but let me just keep it raw as such. And if possible, I'll even add a hyphen in front so that it shows that there's something going on, like that. Okay, great. So we have these errors that will pop up, but by using this approach, it means we still have to check here if these variables exist or have some value or not before we proceed. So if not, okay, or if is no, email empty, and also is no, password empty. So it means if these variables are empty, basically the user entered something. That's what it means. So they are not, the fields are not empty. So if is no, empty email, and then also is no, so we can go ahead and let me echo something like proceed. So let's go ahead and fill in the form with, let's say, j.do@gmail.com and write some password. Submit, don't save. So yes, it tells me now undefined variable empty email. Yes, okay, and it shows proceed. So actually, yes, since I only define the variables once the condition is satisfied, so I can't access them here if they are not defined. And then we are not going to check with is no, we are rather going to check if empty. So if empty, yes, if empty, we can go ahead. So let me do it again. Exactly. So it tells us proceed. So if these variables are empty, it means the user actually provided the information. Otherwise, we are going to have these errors, and once we reach here, the errors are going to be displayed. All right. So and once we have that, we can proceed. So it means at this point we have already grabbed the user email and the password inside these variables. So the next stage, like we said in our sketch, is to be able to now find out if such user exists in our database. We need to be able to fetch such user in the database. So do we have such user in the database? Do we have an admin with such email in the admins table? So that's what we want to find out here. And to do that, we need the connection to the database. So far we can pass that connection right on top here. So we get it here. Since we know we are going to use it a lot, so already we can bring it in once the form is submitted right here. So once we have it, how do we get the user? So we prepare a statement. So we're going to say get admin underscore statement equals to DB connection, which is the database connection. Prepare, then what do we prepare? A query which is select everything about the admin from admins table, where the admin email is equals to question mark. That's what we are looking for. And then we use this statement, the get admin statement, to execute it. Execute it, and we need to pass in the email as an array. Don't forget, you can also use the array constructor like this, array, to be compatible with old PHP version. So let me use that just for your taste. Email. So here we are going to provide the email. So we are looking for an admin with that email. So once we have that, we need to get the data, the response from PDO. So we are going to be like admin and we are saying admin equals to the get admin statement, then fetch, and once we are fetching, we want to pass in the PDO object to configure it. Fetch object, fetch obj. So we want it to return an object result. So if that is good, we should be able to have an admin at this point. So let's var dump and find out if we've done it well. So here we could see something happening as soon as undefined variable db connection. So db connection is rather underscore. Yes, underscore. So like I was saying, if I go back to admin, just admin login just like that, you see I get these errors because the variables don't exist. So here the error variables don't exist, so we cannot echo them. So we could do that by saying, okay, echo is set. If is set variable, if the variable exists, echo the variable, else nothing. So we say no. So the same thing here. If the error exists, so is set display the error, question mark, else no. So this should be the question mark here. These are called ternary conditions. So we check if the variable exists, we then now try to display it, otherwise we don't do anything. So if you reload, we don't get that. So I think I shouldn't forget to use the hyphen inside as well here. Inside, and since we are using the hyphen inside, it means it's a string. We have to concatenate it with a variable, just like that. It's like that. So by doing this, now we don't get the error. We'll get the error once we submit. So now we can try our user again. So j.do@gmail.com. Password is password. So yes, PDO returned us a user with that email. Okay, so one thing is, yes, you provided an email. We checked if there's a user with that email. It is good. It is good because it's an email, it's plain. So imagine somebody else has that email. It means that people could just sign in if we just stick to that alone. So yes, one thing is sure. But once we get that user to, it also returns us the user's password here, and you can see we have the password. So in our case, it's a plain password. So we could simply say, okay, compare the password, the users. So here we will now say, okay, if admin exists, compare passwords. Great. So we'll compare the existing password. So kind of is existing. So variable existing password, that's the password we have of that user whose email we just entered, existing in the database. So existing password is the same as the password the user entered. If that's the case, then definitely this is the actual user. He knows his email and he knows his password. But if you know just the email and you don't know the password that was set for that administrator, then you are not the right administrator, or you are not entering the right information to sign in. So that's the next thing we need to do. So how do we compare that? So PHP has a function called password verify. So password verify, and right in front of the password verify, you can see we have password hash. So that's what I was telling you about hashing the password. So our password is not hashed, so it won't be able to compare. No matter how we compare with the string, the password verify, it won't be able to verify. because it will verify the hash with the password. It will assume that the term password we have here is a hash, which is not. It is actual plain password. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to hash the password. So password, I will echo a hash, password hash. So what password do we want to hash? The string of the password. So I will hash the keyword password, just password as our password. And then what password what algorithm do we want to use? We'll use the default algorithm, and that's it. So once we do that, it should be able to echo. So I'm going to say j.do@gmail.com, and then password. So once I submit, it should give me a cryptogram. So this is a cryptogram of the password. Now I can pick it, go to our database, and now paste it inside here. So we've entered a cryptogram. So this actually is done when we are creating the administrators. So that's on this form here. So once we fill this form, this password here, for the code to be able to save it, it will have to hash it, just like we did with this function here, and save that hash in the table. So since we haven't gotten to that point, I am manually hashing the password, and then once I got it, I placed it inside. So it's just like I created that user using this form here. So once we get there, we will now start creating using the form. So for now, we have a user with a hash password. So we can go ahead and continue verifying. If now the password the user entered, the hash of that password and the hash of the user's existing password, do they match? If they do match, then that's a good user and the user have signed in. So we'll go ahead and say string compare. Since they are strings, we want to compare the first string, which is the password the user entered. Not empty password, is actually password here. This actually password. Yes, this password. So we want to compare. The first string is the actual password the user entered. I will enter here. Then the second string is going to be this admins. So of course we have to always check if this is a valid. So if the query to get the admin from the PDO request was successful, that's when we can proceed in checking the password, because we might need to use the user's existing password by doing admin password. So we are accessing the password column in this admin object. The admin object is actually this admin's entry, and the password column is this password, which contains the value of the hash, which contains the hash as a value exactly. So we want to check if string compare of this. So we want to check if 0 is equals to string compare. This actually means in case this string is the same, this function returns 0. All right, so if this comparison is equal to 0, then it means these two passwords are correct. So if I add and say not, then I want to check if it is not correct. What do we do? So we could do it this way. If it is not correct, we do this. But I'll go with the if it is correct. So if it is correct, we can now go ahead. If not, else, then we'll set an error variable as well, like we did here. And this variable is going to be called invalid password. So in a normal situation, you shouldn't be too specific. So we could say invalid credentials simply. I don't want to precise exactly that it is a password that is wrong. So it might be that yes, the username or the email is actually wrong too. So just to confuse any person who might try to understand how the code works at this point, because this is the administration. So invalid credentials, invalid password. So let me use that and bring it here too. So if such thing happens, we will also like to display the error. So pick it. and put it here. All right, so we can give it a try and see by entering an invalid password. So jdo@gmail.com, and password I'll just enter anything and submit. So invalid credential. So you can see the error comes in. So now let's look at the other aspect, which is what if it actually works well. So if it is true, then this user is a true user. So what happens next? So and at this point, it is very important. This is really a cool part of the signing aspect. So if the user is correct, what we are going to do is, first of all, we would like to send him. So redirect, it is called redirect. So we redirect admin to admin's dashboard. So that's what we want to do. But at the same time, if you look at the admin's dashboard page, which we can see by doing admin dashboard. So I think by doing this, if you go to the admin's dashboard here, you can see that we are displaying the admin's name. So it means we might need, once we get it, we might need to have an information on that particular admin who is signed in. So to do so, once the user is signed in by providing the correct email and password, we might need to create a kind of information that will be transported, that could be carried along from the admin login page to the admin dashboard page or any other page in the administrative aspect that might need information. And to carry it away, we use sessions. So we can create a session, a kind of storage, and then that storage will be available on all the pages that use session, and we can easily access it. So before we redirect the user, we have to store the user in the session. Store admin in a session, and that is done by creating a session variable. It's a global variable like the get or post, but this time it is called session. So it is an array. We pass it a value and we'll name it admin, or we could say logged in admin, and what should it have as a value? I'm just going to pass it the value of the whole admin object. So it is going to carry everything about the admin along. So once that's done, we can now go ahead and redirect the admin to the admin dashboard.php page, and we'll go ahead, we'll use the header function, header input location colon admin dashboard.php. So that's where we are going to send the user. But note, before we can be able to use this function here, we will have to specify here that we want to use the session by starting the session. So that's how PHP works. You have to start the session. So a session is started here. So once it is started, all this page now can be able to access the session variable. Otherwise, this variable would exist. It wouldn't work. So once that's done, now if we assume it works perfectly here, the user is going to be redirected to this page. So it means this page to the admin dashboard here will also need sessions. So we'll go ahead and we'll insert the PHP section on that page. We close it, and then we also start session. So once that session started, we can now go ahead and work on this page and use the administrators, the admin who is signed in. We can use the admin's details and pass it all around the page, like on their name here, to write their name and so on. So let's test it and see. So I'll go back. So note that this sign out is actually a dummy sign out. So j.do@gmail.com, and then password, that's the password we created. So if everything works fine, we should be redirected. So we got invalid credential. So let me try again. Admin, no, it's j.do@gmail.com, password. Try again. So I got invalid. So what happens? So we need to debug it and find out what is the cause. So if we get that error, it basically means this condition is not satisfied. So why is not satisfied? Let's check the cryptogram here. So we indeed have a cryptogram for password. Okay, so let's see what we get by doing var dump of this condition. So if there's any difference between the two strings, and we can die. So j.do@gmail.com, password. Oh yeah, there's an error here. At password. So it returns 1. It returns 1 means 1 is greater than, so the first one is greater than the second one, so it definitely means there's a difference between the strings. So what could be the reason? Well, I think the only way to know here is to hash another password again, try a different hash. Probably I didn't hash that password well, so if I didn't hash it well, I might be thinking of having the actual password, but I don't have it. So what I'm going to do is I'll take the user's password again and then echo, then password hash like this, and then pass in the password. And the password I want to pass in is going to be the password the user types, not hard-coded password. Or let me hard code 1 2 3 4 5, and let's see. So if I try to sign in and reload to submit the form, it should give me a hash. So this is the hash. I'm having some int here. That's the comparison of the two passwords. So this line. So this is supposed to be the hash of 1 2 3 4 5. So normally by comparing now, if I resubmit the form by entering the password, yes. So j.do@gmail.com 1 2 3 4 5. I should get 0. So I'm still getting 1. Yes, because I did not enter that cryptogram here. It makes sense. Yes, so I have to update it in the database. So now let's reload and see. Should get 0. Normal situation. So I'm getting 1. So this is a big challenge. Why? Let me see the length. Here I can see password is 122.5. To be sure I'm covering all the size of the password. So go ahead. Okay, open it. I don't get it. That dot here. Is it part? So let me try again here. And go ahead, make it a string. 1 2 3 4 5. And then once I have that, so we can display it. Let me remove this one so I get only the hash. So if I reload, the hash for 1 2 3 4 5 exactly here. So we can now replace this one with this guy. So once that's done, we can now enable this to be sure of the comparison. And if I go back, let me reload just like that and see. Still getting 1. Okay. Okay, so okay, I think I'm making a mistake by just trying to compare, and that's crazy. That's crazy, but I'll still keep it in case you need that for comparing strings. What I was doing is not going to work. It's not possible because I'm actually comparing a plain password and a hash password. Definitely it's never going to work. So the best way to do that is, like I mentioned earlier, is to use password verify. It's password verify I'm supposed to use, so where I'm going to have the actual password and the hash at the other end. So if password verify is true, if password verify, PHP is has this built-in function that helps us to compare the plain password and then a hashed password. So password verify, if things go well, we should be able to have this working now. That's great. So we go ahead, j.do@gmail.com, then password. Remember, this won't work because it is not password exactly. We use 1 2 3 4 5. So j.do@gmail.com, then 1 2 3 4 5. Enter. Great. So we are redirected to the administrator's dashboard. This means it is indeed successful. So once that's done, before we close this episode, I would like to let you see something. So once we sign in, what happens when I try to go back to the admin login page? Oh, it still asks me to sign in, and this is not great. So this can keep somebody signing in and signing in and signing in, flooding our session variable. So one good thing to do is to come on the admin login and see if there's no session logged in already set for the admin. So we'll come here on top and we'll check if this variable exists. So the session is already set for the admin. It means the admin has logged in. So if that happened, we'll just do the same thing as we did here to redirect the administrators to the dashboard automatically. So in case by mistake the admin comes back on the sign-in page, we don't have to make them re-sign in. So if I reload this page now, it should redirect me back to the dashboard. So I don't actually have access to that page until I sign out again. So the same thing can happen with this page, the admin dashboard. Once I'm here, I shouldn't be able to come here if I'm not signed in. So we can now bring the same condition we have here, but this time around is the negation of the condition. So if not is set, if this variable of session admin is not set, then we don't allow the user to come on this page. So we return them to the dashboard login page. So all the administrative pages, the remaining administrative pages, are going to have this condition on top of them to prevent any user from accessing them without signing in. So this brings us to the end of this episode on user or the admin signing in. So once we have that created, we can go ahead now and focus back again on our articles. So the next episode is going to handle how to create this post, how to handle this form and insert new posts. So thank you so much for watching. If you really enjoyed this, please kindly consider leaving a comment. If you have any questions, ask them in the comment section, and don't forget to like it and share with your friends. We really appreciate that. Thank you so much for watching, and see you in the next episode.